Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have fellow podcaster and coach Joshua Johnson. Joshua, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Tony, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We did something pretty rare. We had a pre-call.
Yes.
Which, as we were just getting to know each other, and one of the things that I learned about you, that you have your hand in so many different things, whether that's from helping catalyze movements or to the coaching, to the podcasting. So I'm always curious, how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
I think my calling is to see the kingdom of God come on earth as it is in heaven in any way that I can. But for me personally, and the part that I play in that, the one thing that I have been called by God in prayer is a playful collaborative. So I'm a playful collaborative, meaning that I want to collaborate creativity with other people to see creative solutions in the world. And I want to do it in a fun way, to be playful, that it's not really just serious, but there's actually some fun to be had in this life with God and with others that we desperately need at the moment.
Amen. That rings more true now than I think in years past. But
yeah.
There are a lot of leaders listening right now who listen and are part of our community, and I think that they might struggle with the word playful.
Yeah.
So give us a working definition of that. Like, how do we drill down on what playful means on a random Tuesday in March?
Random Tuesday in March, playful. I think actually what playful means is part of it is the creative side, that we are thinking outside of the box, that we're having fun, that maybe it's like putting your feet in the dirt, and playing with your son. Maybe it's going out and playing sports, but what it is creative thoughts, solutions, ideas in ways that look different than what the world is and the world portrays. Because I think that most of us live in a status quo humming, that we're just going through the motions day by day. So if I'm playful, I actually get to be out of the box and get to have my crayons out and draw something fun. It may look messy, it may be ugly, but it is fun and playful and creative.
Do you think Jesus was playful? I mean, my initial reaction is to say yes, but I'm trying to think of a couple of scriptures that might align with that. What do you got? You got anything? Have you thought about this?
I think because of children. The kids. He had the kids around him all the time. He says you have to become like a child or else you can't enter the kingdom of God. He was around kids, with kids, loved kids. I think he was playful. I mean, that's one thing I do love about The Chosen, the series, and their portrayal of Jesus as somebody that would tell a joke and have some fun with his friends. And it's not just, stoicism, serious all the time.
Now, how do you manage your playful side with the fact that you also have like all the things to do? Like before we hit record, we were talking about our day yesterday and how bananas nuts it was.
Yeah.
Like, how do you live in that tension?
Well, I think it's hard, right?
Yeah, I was like, not well, with lots of coffee. That's my, yes, always.
I definitely have lots of coffee. And then I switched to like Coke Zero in the afternoon, so I got some more caffeine coming in the afternoon. But I think I need to be grounded in between my different things that I do. And so that means, for me, the presence of God is really important in my life. And that helps me get to a place of creativity and playfulness where I am being my true, authentic self. And so it actually just means that I am paying attention to the Spirit of God with me. And it actually is a turning of my attention towards the Spirit of God. And I could do that in a second or two. And that actually helps ground me into who I am as somebody that was actually made in the image of God. And I think is part of my full humanity. And it brings me into being a real human instead of trying to strive to be something someone else thinks that I am. because that's the thing that really I could get caught up into is I want others to see me as successful, as good, as, and if I could be human and say, it's actually not about them, it's about what I could produce from who I am as a grounded human self, then that's the thing that makes all the difference.
Yeah, one of the things that we say around here a lot is that if you're not dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
Yeah.
And so I would love to just steal any good practices from you that you have to give us. Like, what are some of the rocks of your daily disciplines or practices, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever? What can we steal to make our lives better? That's really what I'm asking.
I think Sabbath is really important. And so Sabbath rest is a huge thing. And Sabbath, it comes not just from a place of I deserve rest because I worked really hard. If you look at the creation story, humans were made on day 6. Sabbath rest was day 7. Humans started with rest. They started with a place of rest and not a place of striving to get to that rest. And I think Sabbath is important. We took an extended sabbatical 2 years ago, 3 months, which was fantastic. So that's an every 5 to 7 year rhythm. Take an extended sabbatical there, but a weekly Sabbath, and then it's daily, every day. I actually like centering prayer for me to start. And centering prayer is basically a posture of silence before God, and maybe focus on one word or two, and just being and sitting with the presence of God. That grounds me so much, rather than me trying to dump all my thoughts to God. I get to sit with in his presence. And if I could get 10, 15 minutes of that in the morning, that discipline helps propel me throughout the day.
Centering prayer. Could you give us an example? I don't want you to do, obviously I don't want you to take 10 minutes now.
I would say, for people who,
never done it before.
Yeah. If you think of meditation, it's meditation, but meditated on a word or phrase, but with the presence of God, with the presence of Jesus in your life. So it's not trying to empty yourself, but it's actually about being with God. So you're basically silent with God. You may focus on something. So for me, sometimes I need the peace of Christ. So I will say, I choose to feel and experience the peace of Christ right now. And so that's something I'll come back to. And if I have thoughts that wander, I go back to that phrase. I choose to feel and experience the peace of Christ. And so I'm just sitting there in the presence of him. And that's really helpful for me.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who was on the podcast, Carlos Whitaker, a couple times, and he says that we have to pray the promise, not the pain.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
So I think that idea about centering in the promise, and because I like to be so practical about it, this is something that you could easily do in the car. It doesn't have to be eyes closed. You could just turn off the radio or the Spotify and just, while you're driving, you could just say those words over. There was a whole season of my life where I used to quote Hebrews and say, what can mere mortals do to me? What can mere mortals do to me? Right? That's so that kind of idea.
Yeah.
So I love that. You have been podcasting a really long time, 280 episodes.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself in 280 episodes? That's macro. Obviously, that's an unfair question because there's so many things. But what are your big takeaways?
I'm interested in genuine, authentic people. I could tell when I'm having a conversation with somebody if they're being themselves authentically or if they're trying to sell something. And so
no, people don't come on podcasts to sell things, do they?
But the goal is for me is even if they do come on to sell something, which
Sure.
this is the way
It happens, right? Yeah, that's right.
It happens, right?
We
That's
sell.
the
We
thing.
help people sell books.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
we do. Podcasts are
Of
about
course.
that. Yeah.
But if I could get to a place of genuine love, acceptance, authenticity, and vulnerability, that's where I want to get to, because that's what's interesting to me. Is to know who you are, what you love, what you care about. And for me, within the podcast space, it's how do we get from an idea, and this is the hard thing in a podcast, is how do you get to from knowledge and idea to a true embodied experience? And this is what I'm trying to do on my podcast, is figure out how do we actually experience this, live this, and do this, and not just know about this, because this is the problem with podcasts. I love podcasts. I'm a podcaster. I love interviews. But if it just stays within the knowledge bank,
Yeah.
and if it just stays within good words and you go, oh, that was great, and you forget about it, then what good is it? Like, I didn't do my job, and the person I have as a guest didn't do their job either, because then it was kind of worthless. I think it was just more knowledge.
Or
And
just
you can go to
entertainment,
Chat
right?
GPT for more knowledge.
Right,
You don't need. Yeah.
That's so fascinating, right? I have a friend who always says, information plus application equals transformation.
Yeah.
And I even like to take it a little bit further. Information plus spirit-led application equals transformation. As Christians, right? We need to be spirit-led in that process.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite episode? So let's say somebody was like, okay, Joshua, like I'm in, I want embodiment. What episode do you think is like the one that you should go to of like, this is what I want every podcast to be like?
I think one of the most transformative episodes is probably my latest with Jamie Winship. It's called Receiving Your True Identity. He has incredible stories. He's been in the Middle East. I used to live in the Middle East as well, work with Syrian refugees and with my wife. And we met Jamie when we were living in the Middle East. And he has such great stories, but he goes into a place where anybody could access the voice of God, the Spirit of God, and they could receive their true identity from him. And I think that is really transformative and helpful for a lot of people to stop believing the lies that people consistently believe in and receive the truth of who they are from God. That one has been very popular and lots of feedback. People love it.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about your time in the Middle East and Asia.
Yeah.
Right. You spent 7 years, right, working in that field. How does somebody stumble into that? It's not like, today feels like a good day for me to resettle my whole life into the Middle East. How did you end up there?
There's two things. One, I was fumbling through my 20s to try to figure out who I was.
Preach.
And
my 30s.
And 30s. I knew that I wanted to do something with God, but I never articulated it with. I always articulated it for. And so I was trying to figure it out on my own.
Wait, say that again, because I don't want anyone to miss that. That is a nugget and a half. Say that again.
I said, I always articulated my life for God instead of with God.
And what's the difference? I mean,
the difference was this. When I was thinking about for God, I was trying to figure out my identity, my ministry, my work, all on my own, and then saying, God, is this enough? Is this what you want? And it was a striving relationship and almost a transactional relationship with God. When I'm saying, hey, I'm doing this for you, I'm doing this for you, I'm doing this for you, what are you going to give me? And instead, I remember at this point, I was in South Korea. I was teaching English and working at a church in South Korea. And for some reason, I was done with that life of trying to strive for God. And I remember getting on my knees and weeping and saying, all right, I'm done. Jesus, you are Lord now. I want to be with you, and I want you to lead. that was the moments when my heart started to come alive for Arab Muslims. And it's weird to say, like, I'm sitting in South Korea. How many Arab Muslims are there? 0. Yeah, there are no Arab Muslims.
I was like, I don't think any. I think it's pretty empty, probably.
It's pretty empty. And so I just started reading and doing things of like, and like, my heart was like stirred towards Arab Muslims, which is a strange thing. I never thought of Arab Muslims before that time. 9/11, that was probably the day I thought of Arab Muslims.
Wow.
And that was it. 6 months later, I was trying to find a woman. And so I got on eHarmony. And I saw this cute girl, cute profile. I wrote to her. I said, hey, what's up? What's going on? I don't remember what I said, but I said something great. And she responded. And she said, hey, I just want you to know that I want to live and work in the Middle East. And if you're not up for it, we don't even have to talk.
Wow.
And so it took me a week to respond to her.
Because you were just shook.
I was shook. I was like, okay, God, you've been saying stuff like this to me for 6 months. If I say yes to her, that means I'm saying yes to you.
Wow.
And so it was a huge deal just to respond to an email. It just meant like, okay, I'm willing.
At this point, did you know that you were going to marry her? You're like,
no,
this is.
I had no idea.
But like, also, like, God is like just told you. Yeah. Okay, keep going. Sorry,
I had no idea.
Okay.
And so I said, yeah, I'm up for it. Let's talk. And so that ended up being my wife. We met back in Kansas City where she was living, and so I came to fly out, moved to Kansas City. We got married about 9 months after that. And then on our 1-year anniversary, we got on a plane and moved to Jordan.
So you spent extensive amount of time overseas. We haven't talked about this yet, but I was in the Army for 14 years, and I was deployed from 04 to 05 in Kuwait.
Yeah.
And so I have a heart. I have a special place in my heart for the Middle East, and just kind of it's not like super clean. It's very tenuous place in my heart.
I would assume so. Yeah.
So just to be, but how did that time overseas affect your heart? Like, how did it impact you?
It moved me to a place of seeing people for transaction, like I was viewing my relationship with God, or like objects of ministry, to a place of genuine, deep friendship. And so it moved me from seeing a mass of people to seeing Hassan and Ahmed and Mukhtar and the friends that I loved and cared for. And it moved me to a place of, man, these people know hospitality and they love and care and have a community on a deeper level than we Americans could ever dream of. It's crazy how wonderful their dependence on each other are in community, how their welcome and acceptance to foreigners and people on the streets and people that don't have a place, that they will just welcome anybody into their home. You walk down the street and you're going to be offered to come in for coffee like 10 different times. And it's a beautiful place when you strip away seeing people for a mass population to actually seeing people for individuals, friends, families, and community that actually loves well.
Obviously, there's some cultural expectation in the midst of all of that, right? Like in Jordan, they're going to expect you to do those kind of things. How has that changed the way that you and your wife show up in the U.S.? And what was that culture shock like coming back?
Reverse culture shock is real. This is what we call it, is reverse culture shock. And
okay, that's what I thought. Right, yeah.
And I'm sure you have, after you were deployed, I'm sure you have it. You're seeing a lot of things. You're coming back. You're like, this reverse culture shock is crazy. Why? Because you're living in a place where the people back home, your friends, your family that you had, they've grown. I mean, we were gone for 5 years, so they've grown 5 years of time without you. They're different. the culture is different. The people are different. You have changed dramatically. So I became a more empathetic, caring, loving person during my time. I'm just a changed person. And also, so when people speak ill of people that have no idea who they are, it kind of starts to make you angry because they're now your friends instead of just a mass of people. And so that's a hard position to be in when you're like, hey, I know those people. That's not who they are. There are some bad actors, but there's a lot of bad actors in America. Like it's just people are bad everywhere and people are good everywhere. So it makes you think humanity as a whole and not just in mass things. But it is really difficult when everybody has moved on and nobody was the same when you left. I
always tell soldiers, I for a number of years I did retreats, marriage retreats for soldiers coming back from deployment. And so one of the things that the imagery that somebody gave me once that I routinely say is like, when you leave to go overseas, it's like getting off an escalator. Yeah. And the hard part is you get back on the escalator where you got off, but everyone else has moved on. Yeah. And that's a wild experience. So in light of that, I know that you're really active in your home church. What's it been like recreating community in Kansas City?
I think, there's a few things that we do. One thing I love about our church is where we have a series of home churches in the city, and then we gather once a month corporately. All the home churches come together once a month. So what I love about the community that we've built is that it is genuine community. It's like one anothering. It is participating together in the home. That is not just a preacher on stage and you're just receiving something. And that specifically has been incredibly helpful finding it in America, because I don't think I could go back to a place where I'm just sitting around receiving and not participating.
Yeah, that's good.
And having other people participate with me, because we all have gifts and things to bring to the table, and it's devaluing of the whole body if we're not actually letting people participate in that. So that has been very helpful. And the others is just the problem with America is you have to build community. Yeah. Like, community is not baked in. And so it's taken a while, but because of my son in our neighborhood, people are out on the street. When we first moved there, nobody was out in front. Nobody was playing on the street. Nobody was out in the front yards. Everybody was in the back. And now people are out on the front street. We know all of our neighbors. We have text threads. We care for one another. Yeah. Make sure that we know things, and we invite people over, and they invite us over, and it's a more communal experience in our neighborhood than it was when we first moved there. And a lot of it had to do with my son going around and finding other boys.
Drumming up friendships, right? Yeah. Kids are fearless.
They are.
And go back to your playful thought, right? Like that's, their desire for play is so strong. I think that's beautiful. I love to hear origin stories. And so the name of your podcast is called Shifting Culture. I would love to hear kind of the origin story behind Shifting Culture and how it came to be and what you hope to accomplish with it.
Yeah. When I was thinking of podcast names and what I wanted a podcast to be, I wanted it to revolve around culture, just as I was fascinated with different corporate cultures with different people groups around the world, cultures within the church, and that I knew that if anything was going to change in this world, what needs to shift is culture. And so that's the big thing. So that's our part to play in it. Yeah. If we want to bring about something that holds our core values and who we are, we actually have to shift culture and not just have nice words on a placard, on the wall in the business and go, this is what we believe, but we actually have to shift culture to bring about the change we desire to see. So that's our part to play in it. And then another part is like, we actually have a shifting culture at the moment. Like the cultures are changing rapidly and quicker than we could ever imagine. And so because of that, then there's that world part. Like, hey, we have a shifting culture. And so my hope then is to say, how do we live faithfully? And how do we live an embodied experience where we could start to look more like Jesus in a rapidly shifting culture? And that's a difficult thing to do when you have ideologies and things pulling at you from every side, and you're trying to find your identity in what other people say and what this great charismatic leader says, instead of your identity as a faithful follower of Jesus that actually embodies his ways, which are so subversive in the way of the world. Like it is, and it's the only thing. And if you're thinking about like cycles of revenge, which I see over and over and over again, I really think the only way to combat that is the way of Jesus, which is forgiveness, love, peace, and it actually works. It stops wars. It stops retribution. It stops revenge.
Wow. Let's say that you were talking to a young leader, maybe somebody who's a C-suite executive or somebody who's a faith-driven, but also has some influence in the workplace. If they were sitting in front of you, what advice would you give them on how to influence culture when maybe they're not the boss, but they're more than just an hourly employee?
Yeah.
Not to say that an hourly employee doesn't have the ability to influence culture. You know what I mean? Let's say they've got maybe a team underneath them.
I think you start with the team. Like it's that team. So if you have the ability to have some influence around some people, that's where you start with everything. And then you provide something where there's a case study so that a whole organizational shift can happen. You can say, this team is operating in this way, and we could actually see results from this. We see that, customers actually are received in a greater way, that they feel honored and cared for and taken care of. We see, this value that is actually being lived out actually makes our organization better. And so you start with a small team, and those are, you have your first followers and you have your first people that start this movement. And it always starts with a small group experimenting and trying to change. And you'll have your late adopters, but only after you see, results that it actually works. Late adopters don't come in unless things are working and they know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And they know the steps to take. And so you have to find your experimenters and your crazy pioneers. And if you could find those people, then you could start to shift some things around and to play with some things that need played with. Experimentation.
Do you have any thoughts about how to get a good litmus test about where the culture is? Because I think that there are a lot of people who are influencing culture that don't exactly know where or how to measure it. Like, where is our culture? How do I define it?
Well, it starts with what you are measuring. Your culture becomes what you measure. It's the stories that you tell. It's the things that you value. So whatever you value goes to the top of what you talk about. You have perceived values, right? Some things that are written down on a wall, like these are our values, but you have your actual values. And your actual values are the things that you talk about. And so you could go back and see, hey, these are the things that we measure. These are the stories that we tell. These are the people that we promote. These are the people that we elevate and share their story. And if you look at those things, you could look back and go, oh, those are the things that we actually value. Yeah. That's where our culture is. That's who we are lived life and reality. And it's not actually the values that we want to hold. And so that means if you want to shift and change, you have to change your stories. You have to promote and elevate different kinds of people. You have to measure success a different way. That it can't just be about dollars and cents. Like if it's just money, that's going to be the value, and that's going to be your culture. So you have to figure out, what else are we measuring? Where that's can good. We be faithful to what we have been called to do?
Well, let me ask you this. As you think about the year ahead, you're active in so many different things. You've got a lot of different projects always moving. What are you most excited about? What should we be praying for you when we think about you in the year ahead? When the bold ones pray for you, what should they think about?
Well, if anybody prays for me, that's amazing. So thank you. That would be awesome. But I just got off a call with a friend who is a filmmaker, screenwriter, and we are working on a one-man show that is going to be story-based, storytelling, that we are talking about it a different way and a new way to live in the world. And that's one big thing that I'm working on, is that I will be performing.
Oh, snap. Look out.
The show. If we don't get Denzel Washington, I will be performing.
I like it's either Denzel or you. That's
yeah,
it.
Exactly.
Those are the only two options.
I mean, they're the top two options, obviously.
Yeah. Never doubted it.
I want to do that and then do a podcast tour on the back of it, do some live podcast interviews. So do an hour-long show, intermission, podcast tour with live interviews, and tour that around. And so that's a big thing and a big dream. Mm-hmm. And hey, I just had it in my heart for a while to do it, and I pulled the trigger earlier this year, and we're doing it. We're getting close.
I love it.
It's good.
And where can people go to find you all over the interwebs? Make sure they don't miss out on the one-man show and the podcast tour and all the things that Shifting Culture Podcast is doing.
Yeah. So you go to shiftingculturepodcast.com or find us on social media at Shifting Culture Podcast. Or you can find me on social media as well, Joshua. Like, I think on Instagram, I'm like Joshua R. Johnson 46 or something. But if you go to Shifting Culture Podcast, I'll post more there. And then
you have links everywhere. You have links everywhere.
I have links everywhere. So
it's good. Good.
I'm there.
You have an email list too, or no?
Yeah, I have Substack. You find me on Substack.
Okay,
and that's
great.
where list goes. shiftingculture.substack.com. Yeah, so I'm writing a lot on Substack lately. I'm doing a lot of reflections on our episodes, which has been a lot of fun, and then doing some random like poetry, creative stuff, and throwing that out there. And it's been a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I invite you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, except I get to name the season of life that you're in.
All right. Can we go in the future?
Nope. No. Okay. Bet on the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. I'm just kidding.
No,
it's
no
a
way.
terrible bet.
No way. Joe Burrow will get hurt again.
Oh, in Jesus' name, I forbid it. Here's the question. In all seriousness, if you could go back to that day that you mentioned in South Korea, mm-hmm. where you surrendered everything.
Yeah.
If you could go back to that younger version of yourself, and after that powerful moment, I know that you were in God's presence, but I can also imagine that there was so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
If you could go back and sit knee to knee with that younger version of yourself, hold his hands, look him in the eye, and give him one piece of wisdom about the journey he was going to go on, what would you tell him?
Listen to Jesus and do what he says.
That's so good.
It. Like, if you do that, your life is set.
That's so good. Yeah. Joshua, thank you so much for taking the time to be generous today. And man, I'm looking forward to hearing about how this podcast tour goes and the one-man play and all the connections that we have. So thank you for being a friend and a fellow kingdom builder. And I can't wait to see what God does next.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Tony. It was a pleasure to be on the podcast. I love it. You're doing a great job with what you're doing, and you have some phenomenal guests. And so the nice thing about me as a podcaster, if I look through who you have as a guest, I'm like, I'm a little jealous, but I shouldn't be jealous. So don't be jealous. So it's good. So you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.